Hello everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today we're talking about one of the most intense and shocking developments in the ongoing Russia-Ukraine war. A massive Russian strike has left 19 people dead and 66 injured, and Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has strongly condemned what he calls a brutal and deliberate attack on civilians. In this video script, we're going to break down what happened, why it matters, what the reactions have been, and what this means going forward. Everything will be explained clearly and simply in short paragraphs and without any headings, just like you requested. The attack unfolded early in the morning at a time when families were inside their homes, children were sleeping, and most people were completely unaware of the danger approaching. Dozens of missiles and drones were launched across multiple regions of Ukraine, overwhelming air defense systems and causing widespread destruction. One of the hardest hit areas was a residential zone where a high-rise building partially collapsed after taking a direct hit. Emergency responders rushed to the scene, pulling survivors out of dusty, smoking rubble and trying desperately to treat the wounded on the spot. The scale of destruction was immediate and horrifying. People who lived in the building described hearing a sudden, violent explosion, followed by the sound of concrete collapsing and windows shattering. For many residents, the night turned into chaos within seconds. Some were trapped under the debris, others ran into the streets barefoot, confused and frightened. Firefighters battled through thick smoke to reach the upper floors, while rescue workers used flashlights and cutters to create pathways through blocked hallways. It was a scene no one expected to wake up to, especially in a residential district far from active front lines. As rescue efforts continued, officials confirmed that 19 people had been killed. The death toll included elderly residents, young adults, and even children. The injured numbered at least 66, with many suffering from severe burns, shrapnel wounds, and blunt force trauma from collapsing walls and ceilings. Hospitals in the area quickly became overwhelmed, with ambulances making constant trips back and forth. Medical staff worked around the clock, treating victims whose lives changed in an instant. The strike was not limited to just one residential building. Across multiple regions, energy infrastructure, transport routes, and public facilities were also targeted. This caused widespread power outages, leaving thousands without heat or electricity at a time when temperatures are dropping. For families who were not directly hit by the missiles, the aftermath still meant sitting in darkness, trying to keep warm and preparing for a long, cold night without knowing when utilities would be restored. This has become a painful pattern in the conflict, where civilians who are nowhere near the battlefield still experience the consequences of war. Zelensky responded immediately, addressing the nation as news of the casualties spread. He condemned the attack as a deliberate attempt to create fear, to break Ukrainian morale, and to target everyday life rather than military positions. His message was clear and emotional. These strikes are acts of terror against civilians, not just wartime actions. He called on global leaders to increase pressure on Russia, urging them to implement stronger sanctions, cut off more economic channels, and provide advanced air defense systems that could prevent tragedies like this from happening in the future. He emphasized that while Ukraine's forces are strong and determined, they cannot intercept every missile or drone without consistent international help. Zelensky reminded allies that every time support slows down or becomes uncertain, attacks like this become more likely. He framed the situation not just as a Ukrainian struggle, but as a global responsibility to defend human life and international stability. His words were directed not only toward political leaders, but also toward citizens around the world who continue to watch the conflict from afar. This attack also highlights a concerning pattern. Over the past months, Russian strikes have increasingly targeted civilian infrastructure. Schools, apartment buildings, shopping centers, and even playgrounds have been struck. Each incident raises international outrage, but the pattern continues. The goal appears to be to weaken Ukrainian society by destroying its normal rhythms. Power grids, water supplies, transportation lines, and residential zones. When people spend nights in shelters, adjust to blackouts, and worry about heating their homes, the psychological pressure becomes immense. Residents in the affected areas have expressed frustration, fear, and exhaustion. Many say that they try to stay strong, but every new attack makes them feel the conflict tightening around their everyday lives. What was once considered a distant war has become dangerously close for families who thought they were relatively safe. Parents worry about their children sleeping through explosions, elderly people worry about losing access to heat or medications, and communities worry about how long they can endure constant uncertainty. At the same time, scenes of unity and resilience continue to emerge. Volunteers lined up to donate blood for the wounded. Local businesses handed out hot food and blankets to those who were displaced. Residents offered shelter to neighbors whose homes were destroyed. The spirit of support and solidarity is strong in these areas, showing that even in moments of fear and grief, people are determined to stand together and rebuild. International reactions have already begun pouring in. Several countries issued statements condemning the attack, calling it unacceptable and expressing support for Ukraine. Humanitarian organizations have also mobilized, preparing to send additional aid to affected regions. Military analysts warn that such strikes may increase in frequency as winter approaches, since cold weather amplifies the impact of hitting power stations and infrastructure. The coming months may be some of the most challenging yet for civilians living in vulnerable areas. This attack also raises questions about how the conflict might evolve. With Russia intensifying its long-range strikes, Ukraine's dependence on advanced air defense technology grows even more critical. Without it, large urban areas remain exposed. Zelensky has repeatedly stressed that Ukraine needs more interceptors, more systems, and more consistent resupply. He argues that this is not only necessary for defending Ukraine, but also for preventing the conflict from spreading further into Europe. On a broader scale, events like this reshape how the world views the war. They remind global audiences that behind every headline are human lives, families, and communities. The statistics, 19 killed and 66 injured, are not just numbers, but real people whose lives ended or changed forever in a matter of seconds. The emotional and psychological impact of such attacks cannot be measured in casualty counts alone. They echo through families, neighborhoods, and generations. For Ukrainians, this war is not something they watch on screens. It's something they live with every day. These attacks force them to rebuild not only their homes, but also their sense of security. They teach children how to survive air raid sirens. They turn ordinary nights into nightmares. And yet, despite all of this, the resilience shown by civilians, soldiers, and leaders remains strong. As we reflect on this devastating event, it's important to understand that the conflict is not slowing down. In fact, events like this show that escalation remains a constant possibility. Civilians remain at risk, infrastructure remains fragile, and the need for international support remains urgent. Zelensky's call for action is not only about defending territory, but about protecting the lives and dignity of millions of people. In the coming days, Investigators and rescue teams will continue working in the affected areas. More information will emerge about the victims, the extent of the damage, and the technical details of the strike. Communities will begin the long process of repairing homes, restoring power, and grieving those they lost. It's a process that has already been repeated many times during the war, but each time it becomes heavier, more painful, and more exhausting. As we close out this script, it's important to remember that behind every tragedy, there are stories of courage. Firefighters who risked their lives running into burning buildings. Doctors who worked without rest to stabilize the wounded. Neighbors who lifted debris with their bare hands to rescue strangers. These acts of humanity stand in contrast to the violence that caused the destruction in the first place. Thank you for watching and for taking the time to understand the real human impact of this conflict. If you appreciate in-depth, clear explanations like this, remember to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. Your support helps spread awareness and keeps these important conversations alive. Let me know in the comments what you think needs to happen next and how you believe the international community should respond.